Hello, official cave dwellers. I'm here with Jim Bagley to put to him your questions. Jim, say hello to the cave dwellers.
Hello, cave dwellers.
So the first question is one that we covered in the podcast, but if you can remind us again quickly. This is from Gary Ninja and Richard Shears. He says, Easter eggs are always fun. Did Jim plant any? We know exactly what you planted. So tell us quickly what you planted.
In Cabal, basically, because I had a load more sprites on screen than Operation Wolf, as a joke, in-house joke, we had if you held a certain set of keys down, but when the game loaded, once it finished loading, it would the screen would clear and the word Operation Wolf would be on the bottom of the screen, and the character of Cabal would walk across the screen and urinate on the all over Operation Wolf.
You're being very polite to the cave dwellers. You've restricted your license your language this time round. Okay, Chris Lord has quite a few questions here about Doom.
Also, can I just say?
Go ahead.
Operation Wolf was a great game.
It is a good game. It's
just an in-house joke.
We've got it back here, actually. Here we go.
Yeah.
I think when I go to the expos, it's probably one of the... I love those old shooting
Operation
games.
Wolf.
You need the ones with the guns that shake, though, when you play the arcade ones.
It was an Uzi, was it? It was a fixed Uzi. Yeah. Okay, so Chris Lord has a few questions. He says, I'd love to hear a bit of an elaboration on the whole Doom, Saturn, John Carmack debacle. How would the Saturn native version of the engine, how was it compared to the PlayStation version of Doom? So Saturn versus PlayStation. Did the PlayStation get to use the GPU acceleration?
The PlayStation did, but because the way the textures work and the hardware works on the PlayStation, they could draw in strips, whereas with the Saturn, you had to draw in quads. So you couldn't get half a texture and draw strips.
Yeah, this was the weird thing about the Saturn, because you could buy a graphics card for the PC that drew in quads and ran like Virtua Fighter and Sega Rally and things like that, couldn't you? And did it have any unique features on the Saturn version that weren't in any other versions? Was there anything worked into that?
No, sadly we didn't have enough time because we'd spent time doing a prototype, and then it was a case of, we need to get it done now, so it was just full on get the PSX version ported to the PC. To the Saturn.
Yeah. Chris, you've got a few more questions which Jim does go into a lot of detail in the full podcast, so we won't go into that right now, but we will end with your final question for Chris, which is, did Jim's Saturn projects use Sega's high-level SDK to bootstrap? Does that mean anything to you, Jim?
The high-level SDK to bootstrap? In what sense?
That's all I've got on the question here. Did Jim?
Yeah.
I guess I guess you wouldn't have just started coding natively on the machine. You'd have had some dev kit.
Yeah, we had dev kits, and it was we'd burn CDs to put the data on, and then it would use the dev kit to run it off the dev kits.
Yeah, I know. Unlike the Dreamcast, you had the choice of WinCE or. Yeah. Was there anything like that on the Saturn, or was it all sort of kicked off in the same way?
It was it was different. It wasn't really an operating system as such. It was just you and the hardware.
Just you and the hardware. Okay. Chris, I hope we've answered that to some degree. So for you, Mark has some questions. He has two questions. He says, "How does games development then?" I guess meaning the 80s and now differ. Obviously tools have improved with debuggers and IDEs, etc. But do the modern tools detract from the creativity?
I don't know, not really, because you can still. I mean, with the stuff you've got now, like with Unity and that, you can still put so much into it. Well, you can put more into it because of the PCs and that can cater for a lot more. They can draw a lot more. They can process a lot more. So yeah, I don't think they detract. I think they probably help.
I think it's probably the opposite way, actually, because you're giving all the creativity, but then when you want to start tracking down those bugs, it becomes amazingly difficult in Unity.
Yeah.
My problem has always been when it comes to trying to write a game is the lack of creativity. But there's nothing really that can help you with that. There's no tool on the computer that can really help you be more creative. I don't
draw
think.
better.
Well, just come up with a concept. I
think it's when you want to go against the system, like whether you're using Unity or Unreal, whether you want to go against the way that they work, then that's when you hit the wall. But if you follow their flow and make a game that the system's supposed to make, then you're sort of okay.
And his second question is, coding on a micro without any internet to look information up must have been challenging. How did you hone your skills, share tips and tricks with fellow game devs without the internet?
You just kept trying.
Perseverance.
Keep poking till something happens.
Patience. Bags and bags and bags of patience. But yeah, now that we've got the internet, it's so much easier because you can get tutorials on the internet and basically get tutorials for anything on the internet now. Yeah. So yeah.
And if you get stuck, you can tweet Jim.
Yeah. And basically, yeah, if it was a case of when we got new machines like an ST or Mega Drive or whatever, basically we'd be given the manual, and then there you go. Learn yourself a new processor and how to use this machine.
Yeah, and that was it. Just man versus machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt Cooper says, as an absolute lover of the Sega 32X and Jim's work since the days of the Specky, I'd love to know how challenging it really was to program for the Sega 32X. And
that's
of course,
one of the games that never got published. I was started on Striker for the 32X.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it died before the game got finished, and it was really nice. So I was quite pleased with how it was looking. You got a nice 3D pitch, and it was cool. And the screen going in and out, and like when they had a goal or a free kick or something, a load of pixels would form into it, like down on one of the where are we? This side, yeah. A lot of the things would form on this side of the screen, and the pixels, and it'd show the picture of like the referee holding the card up or whatever. And it was looking really good and polished, and because you could do quite a bit with the 32X.
Yeah, it was a nice game. I played it on the Amiga. So the Amiga had the power to run that sort of 3D pitch view. So the 32X no doubt would have, had a few nice enhancements. Yeah. And he finished his question with, is there maybe a ROM of Striker lying around anywhere?
Sadly not, no.
No, sorry. No, you're not going to get any piracy direct from Jim here today. But he does say thank you for the many years of entertainment you've provided, Jim.
My pleasure.
And then finally, Mark says, hi, Jim. As an aspirational 8-bit assembly language games programmer myself, and I can confirm this, I've been to visit Mark and he's programming a game on the C64. Mm-hmm. He says, which 8-bit system did you find the most satisfying to code with and why?
Ooh. Specky, because it's what I like. Really, it's what got me into the games industry. But I also really liked the Game Gear and the Master System. Mm-hmm. But I also really liked the Game Boy. It's basically any 8-bit processor, and I've really enjoyed programming all of the consoles that I've programmed, because I think it's probably A, because I enjoyed programming, and B, I was was born at a time when it was right, because I started off on the 8-bit computers, and when it did go to consoles, basically they cut generations of coders off, because you could no longer, you couldn't buy a Master System or a Mega Drive or a SNES or NES and write a game for it, because it was a closed system. So the amount of possible coders that are out there have been denied this because of the way the industry went. So I suppose that's another reason why I've really cherished being able to program all the 8-bit consoles that I did, and the 16-bit consoles and the 82-bit consoles that I did, because I was lucky enough to be given the chance to do it.
Yeah. And I guess they all had a different character.
They did, yeah. Like pretty much every console and computer that I've programmed, I've really enjoyed, because each thing has had something different from the others.
I think that anyone who sort of worked in the industry or coding, I think each machine and each programming language on those machines have their own flavors,
style, yeah.
And then once you invest a certain amount of time, it could be a few hundred hours, however many is needed normally on a longer project, you start to dream in those languages almost. You become so familiar. It becomes like your hands, your brain and your keyboard is just like one, and you're just being creative and writing code. And I think the sad part is, though, I don't know if you get this, if I'm away now from those languages, and you can be years apart, you sometimes lose that. It's where you have to start flicking through the books again to get the syntax. And I guess for you, because you've always had that spectrum throughout the years, you've always been keeping your hand in there. It's like your canvas.
Especially on the Z80, through the Spectrum, through the Game Boy, and now the next. Yeah. Jim is truly in the Matrix.
He's in the Matrix.
It's like the when I did Dragon Slayer on the Acorn Atom, I had to swap over to 6502, and it just felt natural as well. After doing Z80 as well, and then going to 6809 to do the Vectrex version of Bombjack. That again felt natural. It didn't feel strange or anything, and I remembered a lot of stuff back from the Dragon and Tandy days, and so it's weird how I was lucky enough to still be able to remember the instructions for the different processors, because I've done that many of them.
And finally, the last question from Mark is, are there any shortcuts or system exploits that you identified, such as open borders on the C64 or multicolored attributes? So I guess what he's asking there, did you identify something, and do people now say, "Oh, I see you've done a Jim Bagley there"?
You've done the Bagley.
You've done the Bagley.
Basically, one that I don't know how many people know this, but the Master System had a way to expand the sprites and make them bigger. And I actually found this back in the day when I was writing Ultimate Soccer on the Master System and Game Gear. And I asked Sega if I could use it, and I wasn't allowed to use it because it wasn't valid. It was different on some of the sets for the second Mega Drive. The chipsets were different.
Undocumented
so it didn't have
feature.
that. Yep. So it was an undocumented feature that I found, and it was great. It made such a huge difference, because I could have bigger sprites on the pitch for the football players. But yeah, sadly I couldn't use it.
Damn you, Sega!
I think it was something that was left in from the MSX days, or the MSX chipset. So
there we go. Well, Jim, thank you again for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
And we will share that with the official Cave Dwellers. And they can find you on Twitter. They can follow you on Twitter and see what you're up to. What's your handle on Twitter, Jim?
It's Jim Bagley 69, I think.
Jim Bagley 69.
That's the year I was born.
Yeah.
There we go. Thanks very much, Jim.
Yep, my pleasure.
So